Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
The notion that one's goal in life is to be happy, that your own happiness is the goal. I just don't podcast.
He's just dropping pearls throughout. There should probably be, by law, a documentary crew following him at all times. Just to catch any pearls.
Yeah, I queued up the movie on my iPad because there are a couple things I want to read straight from.
Yeah, you should.
This thing is devastating.
It's incredible.
Here's a question that struck me while watching this last night.
Yeah.
Is Miyazaki the director we've covered who would hate this podcast the most?
I'm just sort of going through to triple check that absolutely, of course you're right. I mean, there's no even...
I mean, Man...
I don't think Man would be too impressed. But he was nice to the One Heat Minute boys.
He was.
So he's clearly has some appreciation for, the new world of podcasting.
That is true. I feel like George Lucas wouldn't like hearing the Star Wars episodes.
No, but I think he might appreciate that we're trying to grapple with his prequel characters and works, at least, somewhat sincerely.
I don't think so.
No, probably not.
I think he would say they're kids' movies. You're not supposed to take them seriously. I think he would love...
I don't know why you're talking... He was on the show.
You're right. He was on the show. And he didn't like it.
Yeah.
He was on it twice. 2-time guest.
I think Verhoeven would be tickled.
Oh, most certainly.
I think... no, there's no question.
Shyamalan, I think, would love it.
I think it'd be an emotional roller coaster for him, as most things seem to be. Right?
Yes.
He lives on the surface.
Yeah.
His feelings are on the surface. So he'd be with us in the praise, and he'd really be devastated by the criticism. Right? He's sort of a roller coaster guy.
I feel like we can say this now that it's been almost a year, but we were like in the preliminary stages of getting to sit down to talk with him.
One day.
But I can say this for Glass this year. We had like a 2-month long email back and forth.
Yeah.
That we thought it was looking like there was a good chance.
Hey, at least they didn't just ignore us. They were talking to us. It was a concept.
It was a concept.
They were intrigued by the concept.
It was a concept.
But he's going to make more movies. I believe didn't he just sign a deal to make at least 2, right?
Really? And he's got an Apple show, which those seem infallible. Apple TV Plus?
He signed a new deal, yes, with Universal Pictures, which is a well-known movie studio.
Yes. He signed a deal with Universal Pictures to mortgage his house 2 more times.
Right.
Is it just a distribution deal?
Just movies to come out Feb 2021 and Feb 2023.
Nice.
I do think the structure is as it was for his
He's got to bet the farm.
No. Yes. He will finance his 2 movies the same way.
It's fucking rad. Yeah, I mean, I think every other director we've covered on the show might get a little sensitive at certain parts.
Certainly.
But would generally not be as philosophically opposed to this endeavor as Miyazaki.
Sure.
It's such a weird thing, like an hour into this movie when he makes a joke.
Well, his version of a joke usually is that he says something sort of like cruel or devastating, and then he sort of like chuckles.
That's why there's like an hour in, he makes like a pure joke.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was something about like, oh, you're going to throw your back out.
Right.
Like it was like a dad joke.
Right.
It wasn't like him like dropping the most like, when like edgelord comedians say like, look, I'm just telling the truth. People don't like it, but I'm just telling the truth.
You're saying Miyazaki's actually that.
Miyazaki's like actually the one person telling the truth, right?
Look, we're here to discuss The Kingdom of Dreams and Madness.
Of course,
as
one
documentary
does.
by Mami Tsunada.
Mm-hmm.
Mami Tsunada.
Mm-hmm.
About the production process of The Wind Rises.
We're closing the book on Howl's Moving Podcast.
Correct. It's been a while since we talked Miyazaki, so you had to remember this miniseries name.
We're like 50% through Demi. We took a step back into Miyazaki, which turns out it was to our benefit that we waited.
Because Because
the landscape's fucking changed, and we're going to get
new
into
landscape.
it.
I mean, probably changed in really magical and mystical ways that are really beautiful to consider, right?
or streaming culture is just digesting us all.
Well, it's just the new way that people watch things.
Yes.
Like, and that's just how it is.
Right.
Where everyone's like, well, I think what HBO Max is going for is this. And I'm like, I think what HBO Max is going for is that it will be one of the major networks because that's what network TV is going to be. It'll be like the big streaming network.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're going for. Everyone just needs to have one now.
You know what's fascinating to me? And I know we're shooting 17 different directions here, but all these things are on subject. I'm just dropping not contradictory, but I'm shooting bullets in opposite directions.
Okay.
All on this theme, okay?
Okay.
Miyazaki, a little more difficult to watch these films than most, in that you have to buy the physical things or
you need a disc, or maybe you go to the movies, or right. Yeah.
Right, go to a library. Mm-hmm. The digital rental is the big thing you're lacking with Miyazaki up until 2020.
Because I'll pay $4 to watch a movie.
Well, this is a thing
happily.
I have found that now, and we've been doing this show for almost 5 years now. This is such a cultural shift. Now, if we cover a movie that is not free, quote unquote, streaming available on a platform, and it requires a $3 rental, people go, "Oh, this movie's like impossible to find." Right?
It's like easier than ever. When I was a kid, you had to go to the danged video store, and maybe they didn't even have it.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
you're saying kids today.
You're
putting on an apron and you're grumbling about how people bow.
Full awareness that some of the kids are people in their 40s who listen to this show. But I understand it. It's like we're conditioned at this point. I use the Apple TV app, right?
So do I. I know what you're talking about, where you can sort of say into the remote, essentially, like, well, you don't like to say it into
I'm
the
not
remote.
that fancy.
Okay,
I'm not talking to no robots. I'm typing it in.
Well, but I'll just like take my remote and I'll just be like,
fancy Sims.
Name a movie. Name a movie. Well, just pick a movie, right?
Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. And it will go like, it's available right now on Stars. And I like subscribe to Stars so I can watch it.
Well, I'm a man of words. I like to read that text as it shows up on screen. But yes, it will tell you that, right?
Right. It'll like, it sort of collates all the subscriptions you might have.
Yes.
And it finds the service. And then once in a while you want to watch Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed and no one's got it. So it says rent for $3.99. And I'm like, well, I could do that, or I could just watch one of the 40 million other movies that I could just watch in a second now. And so maybe then that's sort of part of it, right? People are just like, well, there's other options.
And even sometimes it will say like, you know, a subscription you haven't necessarily signed up for.
Sure.
It'll just be like, just so you know, this is on Cinemax. And
right. You can get it on Magnolia
Selects. Right.
And you're like,
do a 1 week free trial? So I have, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, this guy has been the one major outlier where it's
HM.
Miyazaki-san.
Hayao
Miyazaki. Miyasan. Where he's just like, don't want it on digital at all. It flattens the movies out. I want to control the context in which these films are seen.
Right.
I want them to retain their specialness.
Because you're never going to be able to say to a Netflix or an HBO Max, like, hey, we'll give you the rights, but only if the movies can only be watched at like a home theater experience.
Right.
Because I think part of what distresses is like, what if kids are watching it on their tiny little phone? What if they're not even playing the sound? Like, you know, like things like that, you know.
God forbid, Netflix 4X speed.
Yeah, what if they're watching it at 4X?
Right, any of those things.
Not 4DX.
I mean, he would love 4DX. If Miyazaki loved one thing, finally, the smells I dreamed of.
Oh, boy.
The back punches I had always imagined in my heart. I'm very curious. We were talking about this the other day, but of course, this is Blank Check. It's podcast about filmographies. Directors of mass success earlier on in their career give a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion products they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce baby. And we're closing the book on Miyazaki, the big leather-bound book that paid off brilliantly in our final episode.
Well, you never really let me in on that bit, I will say. You kind of set it up without... We never discussed a closing moment. You know, Chip Smith will be back.
It's called improv, my friend.
Yeah, right. Well, you're only one of us is a trained improviser.
Well...
That's interesting.
Well, two, right?
Thank you.
Are you a trained improviser? You took a class.
I took some classes.
Yeah.
I did some improv.
I think that counts as trained.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm more actually responding because I had cut all that out.
Good call.
You cut all of that out?
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
No, it
fuck.
wasn't good.
Okay, so
Should
let
I
me-
keep it in?
No,
No,
keep it cut
Keep
out.
it out and double cut it.
So then here's some real.
keep it out and have it? Would that be the sort of reverse?
Here's some real bonus content. We did a bad Chip Smith bit and it's gone. You'll never
and
hear
you'll
it.
never hear it.
Salute, bad Chip Smith.
It's not even like paywall stuff. It's just like not good.
Yeah, what if we just put it on the paywall and their Patreon numbers just collapse? Woo!
Whatever, it's cool.
Yeah, everything's good. So this is the thing you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if a sort of condition of the deal with HBO Max was that they have their own sort of
A vertical, essentially, right? Like a section within the site.
a vertical
The app,
that it's sort of like I don't know what's the word I'm looking for.
cloistered.
Not even that, but that he has some ability to sort of frame the films, contextualize the films, put them in their own little section.
Sure.
You know?
Right. It's not just like Spirited Away is next to Snow Dogs and the
Yeah.
Own silo.
Right.
silo. Sure.
Right.
Now, if you're Noah Jupe, don't get in that silo. You might drown in corn.
Okay.
It's a reference to A Quiet Place.
Yes.
Just thought I'd do that.
Noah Jupe.
Noah Jupe, isn't that his name?
Yeah, it's quite a pull, though.
Jupey. He's everywhere.
What else is he in?
Jupey Jupe?
Am I not thinking?
He's
Well,
in
he's
Honey
in
Boy
that-
this
he's
year,
in
which
that-
is sort of his breakout.
Oh, and what?
corn.
He's in the corn silo, of
Yeah.
course. He's
But
in
no,
it.
he was in Suburbicon. I feel like he was in one other thing. He's sort of
I didn't realize that was the same kid.
this is the new kid. You know, this is kind of like,
He's the new kid.
you know, like, yeah, is this Wonder, apparently. I haven't seen Wonder. Apparently he's in Wonder.
Hmm.
Oh, and he's in Ford versus Ferrari as well. He plays Christian Bale's plucky
Car.
young son.
You know that movie where Christian Bale jumps on a child's shoulders and goes vroom vroom?
Can I
vroom.
do a joke about Ford versus Ferrari, which is not
Please.
going to be, it's going to be coming out right around
Be
at this point.
cresting. Yeah.
You know, it's a movie that I like things about and I think is pretty fun to watch, but is sort of like not quite, you know, great.
Mhm.
And one of the problems is it has this wife character played by Katrina Balfe from Outlander. And
Very good actor.
She's Christian Bale's
Yeah.
wife, and it's a lot of like, oh, one of those very thankless
Boys will be
characters
boys.
that you really hoped we were done with at this point,
She unfolds
even in a
the
period
lawn chair
film.
to watch her husband get in a
Exactly.
fist fight.
I think it would be funny to do a movie like that, a biopic, where you've got like Damon and Bale, right? Where the wife is, both of them have wives played by the same actor, they have the same name, and they perform the same function, and no one addresses it. Where basically they just both are married to the same woman.
Yeah.
But it's not like, it's just
Right.
like where the movie just doesn't even bother. It literally like clips the
Yeah.
wife into both scenes.
I've talked about this, but the Untouchables,
The Untouchables.
where Patricia Clarkson plays the wife of
Palmer
Elliot
movie.
Ness.
Sure, right.
who has a pretty substantial role.
Sure.
Maybe the largest role outside of the Untouchables themselves and Ness.
Right.
A lot of screen time. Phenomenal actress.
Right.
Is credited in the final film as Ness's wife.
Oh, boy.
Is never given a character name, despite the fact that movie is based on a real person.
Yeah.
And they could have just looked up what was Elliot. They could have grabbed their little Siri remote, like Blue Blood Sims.
Right. Blue Bloods, but like, no, I don't want to compare myself to the show you were in either.
Wow. I do think of Blue Bloods as a Griffin movie.
I think it's fucked up that the Untouchables didn't acknowledge that like the real Ness had a yo-yo and a backwards baseball cap and a stripy shirt.
I mean, an incredible joke. And I'm too tired to laugh. I didn't sleep at all last night, but inside I am guffawing. I am
I'm very happy about it.
deeply
It's one of
amused.
those jokes that one is silly and funny, and
The
two
best.
also you can just imagine the joke, like you
Yes.
just imagine Ness in the movie, Kevin
Yeah.
Costner dressed like that, and you can have a little laugh.
Hi-ya. I can't do it, Costner.
Kevin fucking Costner.
Kevin fucking Costner.
Hayao Miyazaki, Kingdom of Dreams and Madness. I just wanted to say we're
Yeah.
talking about he's a truth teller, he pushes boundaries, right? But
Sometimes he misses.
Sometimes he misses.
Except he never misses.
He actually has never
Yeah.
missed in his
Yeah.
entire life. No, but in this movie, it's about him. It's following his creative process on this film, and
Doing
yes,
the wind
it's sort of.
rises. Yeah.
And then at the same time, everyone in the movie, at the same time, Isao Takahata is making The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, which was supposed to
Sure.
come out at the exact same time.
Yeah.
But was so massively delayed, it came out like 18 months later.
Well, he's almost like the Godot
Well,
of
that's right.
this.
And everyone is like, Miyazaki, yeah, sure, he'll bust your balls, but God, Jesus Christ, that guy scares the shit out of me. Like, anytime anyone brings him up, they're like, oh, Paku-san, whoa, I don't know what to say. Like, he's this nightmare figure looming over things. At the end of the movie, he pops in for 1 second, and he's just like, I think what's good about Hayao Miyazaki is he makes good films. And, like, that's all they get out of him. Yeah. It's just wild stuff.
This whole thing is wild. Yes, to go back to this, like, the truth teller thing, right?
Yeah.
It never feels like he is trying to be provocative.
No.
It just feels like at any given moment he takes a deep breath and consumes his surroundings and then just perfectly, eloquently, but cuttingly
lays you out.
Analyzes the situation.
But it's like your grandpa who has no...
Sometimes it's the world.
Yeah, sometimes it's about the world. He lays the world out.
Right.
Sometimes it's about Ghibli.
Yeah.
It's just a name he got from an
airplane.
It's
about himself. Like, that's the thing, is that he feels so kind of clear about everything around him.
And this documentary is so much about the purity of his process, and it does feel like, right, there is like a weird purity to all the things you're describing.
Yes.
But he's like your grandpa who has no filter, except instead of just like saying some sort of like vaguely offensive thing.
He's correct.
He's right. Exactly.
You're like, someone like this shouldn't exist who is just this consistently correct about it.
He's always got his apron on.
It's incredible.
What a king. Apron wearing king.
And that he owns the company.
I know.
But it's about the work. Yeah, it's about the process.
There's that very early scene where they're having the producer Suzuki, who obviously like runs shit, right? And
he's an
like
incredible character.
Incredible, and like just has the burden of these, insane artists to carry with him. And he's having like a production meeting. He's having like a merchandise. I forget what it's a merchandise.
Yeah.
And they're talking.
It's a merchandise spotlight.
And then you see Miyazaki like walk by and sort of go like, sort of waves his hands and then walks on. It's like he's never going to walk into that. He doesn't want to be in that meeting.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Even though he's nominally like the founder.
He understands that pays the bills.
Right.
But it is crazy. You mentioned the apron.
Love that apron.
He's literally wearing it every single moment.
His routine, as shown in this film, is he wakes up in his nice but not, gigantic, nice-sized house.
That was the thing I had always heard about why he was never going to make a streaming deal. Was like, no amount of money matters to him. He has a nice house.
He's got a nice house. That's it.
But like the key word was nice. Not like he already owns a mansion. It was like he has a modest home that he enjoys.
It seems like his home, which seems like a very nice place, is valued partly because he can get up. He can walk to Ghibli.
The whole
wearing his apron.
Yep.
He can walk by the nursery where the staffers' kids are being nurseried, and he can wave to them.
Yes.
Then he can go to his desk, and he can draw pictures of airplanes and, think about life.
Doesn't he say he has a massage brush that is part of his routine?
And we never see it.
He outlines his whole day.
Yeah. It's very simple.
And his day is so simple that massage brush gets above the title billing.
You never see him...
A cornerstone of his...
eat, right? I'm trying to think. I mean, there's their famous Spirited Away DVD extra where he makes ramen for everyone.
Yeah, I feel
But like I don't think you see him eat much.
Cook at home?
Do you? I guess one time you do. Yeah.
I don't know if you see him eat.
It's like, the DeFara pizza guy, Dominic DeMarco.
One of the all-time.
Legend. In my opinion, the greatest New Yorker alive.
It's a really good argument.
Like I think it was New York Mag. One of those places used to have one of those sort of 20 questions where the questions are always the same, and one of them was like, "Who's the best New Yorker?" And I was like, if they ever ask me, it's Dom DeMarco.
I think that's a great choice.
And he's old and he spends all day making pizzas in his rat-infested, beautiful, wonderful pizza place. And then like apparently for dinner he has like a slice of pizza and a glass of wine.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what you want to strive for, right? Where you're being an old guy where you're like, I don't need much anymore.
I kind of know what you're talking about. Remind me, and for any of the listeners who don't know who you're talking about.
He runs DeFara Pizza. It's a famous...
I want to unpack this.
Yeah.
He is kind of the American Miyazaki.
Sure, right. It's like simplicity.
I was watching this, and I was trying to think, like, who else is like this in their field?
So just to clarify, you're right. For listeners who wouldn't know, it's like a place in Brooklyn, deep in Brooklyn Midwood, that's been around forever. It's been around since the 70s. It's this guy, Dom DeMarco.
It's on like the Avenue Q stop on the X train.
It's on the Avenue J stop on the Q train.
Okay, but that's a funny joke.
It was a funny joke.
Thank you.
And he it looks like just a regular old slice joint.
He's had it for like 60 years?
It's since the early 70s, I think. So, 50-ish years. And he makes pizzas. He's the only one. Although now I think he's old enough that now I think his kids do now assist.
Yes.
because it used to just be him and his kids would just take the orders.
For a very long time, like up until 5 years ago, he did
everything. He's got these hands
made the dough himself.
that are like oven mitts because they have this incredibly hot oven, which he says is like the secret to his success.
Yeah.
And he's just pulling them out with his hands.
He pulls them out with his bare hands. Every pizza pie. He made every one himself. He orders the ingredients himself.
He's got the basil in the window, It
used to be like, they'd make like 1 or 2 slice pies a day. And so however many slices come out of that pie, that's the single slices they sell. And otherwise, you got to buy a full pie.
It's quite expensive. It always has been, quote unquote,
but it goes up.
But it's great.
It is truly the single best thing I've ever tasted.
It's a fun experience too, even though you usually have to wait a while, and like that's sort of part of the whole, process.
Very often there's like a line around the block,
and you're watching this old man. I
think
think is in his 80s at this point.
I think his
and
late
he's
80s,
shuffling around. I mean, the square pie as well. If you ever want to,
both incredible,
so good.
Yeah.
And then when the pizza's almost done, he'll kind of look up at you and be like, pizza, and you're like, yeah. And he takes out the basil and he like snips it sort of roughly,
with scissors.
With scissors to sort of like finish it off. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, and he always has an apron, much like
he always has an apron.
Son.
He like used to work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
He then started taking 1 day off.
I think it's open like 5 days a week at this point. Yeah. It's closed like Monday, Tuesday.
I mean, I think his son-in-law sort of followed him. A couple of his kids have followed him. He has other people working now off of his recipe. They franchised, so now they have a couple other locations. It's still an incredible recipe. But there was something to the fact that it was this one guy.
What a guy.
For about 50 years.
He's got his little hat.
Made every single pie himself.
Right. Almost
never took a day off. I mean, literally, you could count on 2 hands the times he had taken days off within decades. And he said that every night
he gets a slice of pizza and a glass of wine for dinner.
He makes himself one last pie for the day.
Right.
And then he has some pizza and a glass of wine to make sure that it's still good. And he has told himself the moment the pie has dipped in quality is the moment he retires.
It reminds me of kind of how Bourdain always talked about street food vendors as well. People who have spent 20, 30, 40 years making
doing the same
one
thing.
dish and perfecting.
Exacting.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
100%.
It's like this guy perfected pizza, and that's his only goal is to perfect pizza. And he has sort of very reluctantly by his children been pulled into the 21st century.
Yeah,
where they're like, you're going to die at some point. I mean, I'm sure they're not phrasing it to him that way, unless they are Miyazaki-esque. But they're sort of like, we need to like create a future for this because we don't want your legacy and your reputation and your recipe to die with you.
There's now these sort of franchise locations. There's a couple of them. I think there's one in Vegas. They're not as good.
There's another one. I mean, they're still excellent.
They're pretty good.
You're like, this is a great recipe for pizza. Versus this being the best thing I've ever put in my mouth.
He tried to open, someone tried to open a sandwich shop once that was around the corner.
Yeah.
That was pretty good, but it didn't make it.
They owned like the other.
And they owned like the next door.
Yeah.
Anyway, Miyazaki.
It is that thing though. And he is like very famously a man of few words. He's like, I just make the pizza.
Right.
You know? And Miyazaki has that same sort of like, put on the apron, sit at my desk. It's kind of incredible how it's just like a little David's miming, Miyazaki hunched over, etching, drawing, scribbling. But he's just got a little desk in the corner of the room.
Yep.
He's got no executive office. Not that I expected that he would have some big like fucking
but he's very
Roman
much,
Roy.
He's in the bullpen with the other animators.
Yeah. And everyone's sort of like afraid of him, but he's there
it's mostly
working as
women.
hard as anybody.
Very noticeably mostly women.
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah.
There's this sort of sidekick / I guess is one of the lead animators is sitting next to him.
Yes.
And early on, he like gives her what I imagine is like the highest praise you could ever receive, where he's like, she's a good animator or something like that. Right? You remember that?
She's his favorite. What's her name? Her name is so perfect too.
I don't remember.
But yes, he keeps on talking about how fond he is of her and
he presided over her wedding.
Right. And you find out at the end, in somewhat of a twist, that she's 3 months pregnant.
Yes.
And she has told everyone else.
Right. Suzuki is like, she didn't want to tell you until it was done.
I'm the last to know.
Yeah, right. And mostly the film is just about them finishing The Wind Rises.
Right.
There's no dramatic problems.
No.
This isn't like the great, of course, film Ghosts of the Abyss, in which they find out the 9/11 happens halfway through or anything like that.
What a wild movie.
This is a wild-ass movie.
We should go back and watch Ghosts of the Abyss again.
Do a director's commentary.
Yeah.
I believe Aliens of the Deep is going to be on Disney+, so...
Really? But not Ghosts of the Abyss?
I think Ghosts of the Abyss might not be Disney. It might be Paramount.
I think it's Disney.
Well, but it was...
I think they're both Disney because... I remember there being a combo 3D Blu-ray set,
so I don't
which
know.
I'm realizing I should own.
I don't know.
Disney was kind of the only studio doing 3D at that moment.
Right. So anyway, there's nothing like that. The most dramatic plot moment, I would say.
Yeah. I just want to clarify. Yes, there's nothing like that. 9/11 does not happen in this movie. That is set.
There is. So you hear that radio address from the Japanese Prime Minister of the time, where he's talking about the aftermath of the Fukushima disaster. Mm-hmm. So there are things in the air that are clearly sort of like on their minds. Yes. And because they're making The Wind Rises, they will occasionally discuss like the war and the morality of this person that they're making a movie about and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But then I would say the most dramatic moment is that Miyazaki gets a letter from a neighbor of his when he was a young child during the Second World War.
When he was taken in by another family.
When he was evacuated.
Yeah, right.
And this man who is older than Miyazaki, so probably in his late 70s, is like...
His name is Jojo Rabbit.
Is relating a story of like, we were bombed and my house was burned down and we went to your house and no one was there. And we were sitting there and then your dad came and gave us chocolate. And I remember this very fondly and I wish to like tell you of this.
Yes.
And Miyazaki is like just staggered by this letter and keeps thinking about it and discussing it and like wonders how to respond to it. That's the big dramatic thing in this movie. And
at the end, he responds to the letter, but he can't even bear to read it himself. So the director of the documentary reads it.
Correct. And like, I feel like people making a similar kind of movie about a director might find that to be like, that's a little inconsequent. Like, we don't need that, right?
Sure.
Like, let's not put that in the movie. Whereas Tsunade is like, this will be the sort of moral centerpiece of the film.
Well, I also relate because I take years to respond to emails because of self-inflicted pressure to make it perfect.
Yeah.
But it is that thing of just like he has, in a way, narrowed his life to the essentials.
Yes, 100%.
Of the things that are fulfilling to him.
Yes.
He feels either gives value to the world or gives him value.
He is married, but you don't see his wife.
Is his wife not the woman at the end?
I think so. I mean, that is a sliver of... You see her right for a second.
And there's a scene where they're reading the newspaper.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right. But you barely see her.
You barely see her. Yeah. She speaks in that scene.
Because there's that scene right at the end, yes, where he's like, she was like, when's it going to be done? Like, you know, he's like joking about her.
Right. She appears a little bit at the end.
Right.
At one point, the filmmaker asks him, like, so how did you know your wife was the one? And he was like, what do you mean?
This is such a weird part.
What made you realize that you want to be with her? And he was like, I married her because that is what you do. It had to be done.
And then she asked some follow-up question. He's like, that's the secret of life. I can't reveal it. Or like he just doesn't have an answer.
This is the thing you do. You marry someone.
It feels like it's too personal a question from Miyazaki. There's just some sort of like wall you can't reach. But in the
slivers you see of the two of them together, they seem very happy and warm together. It's not like this is some weird marriage of convenience.
50 years. Like 100%.
Well, there are people who are married for 50 years.
That's true, and they live separate lives and all that. Yeah, no, I know. But, you know. And also, Wind Rises is a very warm movie about a marriage in a way, too, so.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe he's... You also see his son.
They're not the Lockhorns.
No, they're not the Lockhorns. I mean, they're not as funny as the Lockhorns, if that's what you mean.
Do you know that when I was little, there's no reason you would know this. When I was little, I used to think the Lockhorns was called the comics.
Okay. Because why? Because it was like, was it at the top of your funny pages and it said like comics, like, and the Lockhorns was right below it? I mean, remember the Lockhorns?
No.
It's one of those great comics, the funny pages.
It'd be a one panel, like it's usually a one panel. It's a square, a perfect square.
You got this man, Mr. Lockhorn, and this lady, Mrs. Lockhorn. They're married to each other, and they both think that the other one sucks shit.
I guess I kind of remember this.
They fucking hate it.
It's like basically she's like, I made you dinner, and he's like, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
I want a divorce. Like that's sort of the humor level.
This was before I could read, and when the newspaper would arrive, I would tell my father, "Can you read me the comics?"
Right.
and he would know that means I have to read aloud a Lockhorn.
Well, you don't have to read aloud. So would he just make it up?
No, because to me that was the comics.
Oh, you just wanted the Lockhorns?
And then after that, I'd be like, let me read these other things. But the comics to me meant the Lockhorns.
That is really weird.
And he would read it to me, and I would go, I don't get it.
Right.
It wasn't like I loved the Lockhorns. I'd be like, what's the joke there? And then I'd read Peanuts, and I'd be like, this shit rules.
Yeah.
Why isn't this the comics?
I was a Far Side guy.
Far Side rules.
That makes so much sense.
I'm mentioning Far Side because what do you guys think about the new apparently there's a new Far Side?
Is it going to happen, or is that confirmed or not?
I mean, I just sort of saw a lot of stuff on social media.
There's starting a lot of business around the Far Side again, but then it seemed like it's just that he digitized it and made a website.
Well,
is there new stuff going to happen?
On the website, the website was updated with a new online era of the Far Side is coming.
I think the era is just Far Side has been
possibly
added to HBO Max.
But I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Anyway, I mean, generally into it. One of those things where I'm like, does his sense of humor and perspective belong where it, was? Like, I love that stuff, but do I need him talking about now? But maybe I do. I always loved the Far Side.
He falls in that weird category too of him and why am I forgetting his name now? Calvin and Hobbes.
Sure.
Where they both
Jim something.
It's not Jim.
Okay, great.
I want to say Roger, but it's not. Everyone's yelling at me right now. Everyone's listening to this podcast and
was your question? I'm sorry.
The writer Calvin
Bill
Hobbes.
Watterson.
Oh, Bill Watterson. Yeah. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. I wasn't listening.
Yeah, clearly.
I wasn't interested in what you were saying. That is something. I got an email popped up. Anyway, go on. Yeah.
Anything good?
I got to tell you, pretty regular.
Those two guys have a weird sort of integrity that is usually lacking in American art, where they were just like, I'm done.
Yeah, most of the funny pages, they just run forever. And, your cute comic about like life in an office for a Gen Xer in a cubicle culture will turn into some weird like Trump screed about being an alpha male or whatever.
But David, it's such a good strip.
When I was a kid, I loved Dilbert.
It makes so much sense that he has such an air of superiority because the strip is so...
It's a cornerstone of American humor.
I haven't been following what's been going on with Dilbert. You're saying he's like Republican now?
Republican would be a kind and gentle way to describe whatever happened to him. No, he turned into just sort of a weird kind of testosterone-y red pill guy, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't know. Wow. And kind of one of those like kings of like debate me bro Twitter attitudes, right? He's just all the time he's like, well, I'm intellectually superior to you and like here's how I prove it. Also, I have big muscles.
That's his big thing, that he's like jacked and 60 and he's smarter than everybody and he knows better because he made Dilbert.
Anyway.
Isn't there a rumor that his house is in the shape of Dilbert's head?
There is a house in the shape of Dilbert?
That his house
is it?
In the shape of Dilbert's head.
Okay.
I think it's maybe true. And if it's not true, I want it to be true. Because I like this idea of this guy living in a cartoon head house.
I mean, it'd be funny.
Saying, I'm clearly the most intelligent man alive. Yeah.
I mean, his head kind of looks like a castle. It's got little crenellation.
Right. I think that's, yes.
I always liked...
he's got the two blank eyes that look like portholes.
Wally. I don't know. I'm trying to remember other Dilbert characters.
Wally? Dogbert. Catbert.
Well, Dogbert and Catbert. And the boss, of course. The pointy-haired boss.
Yeah, who's the guy with the tie going up?
That's Dilbert. When he took Dilbert's the one with the tie going up.
Oh, then who's Wally?
Wally's like the other one. He's got glasses. He's bald.
Oh, yeah.
He's his coworker. And then there's, I think, Alice, the one with the triangle. Remember the Larry Charles cartoon?
Yeah, I kind of like the cartoon.
I think that was funny in my memory.
I think it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago now. I don't know. Catbert. We said him already. Ratbert, I think.
Jeez.
I think it was a dinosaur.
Oh, there was.
Anyway, fuck
I'm nodding.
Dilbert.
Yeah, fuck Dilbert. Dilbert's a piece of shit.
Dilbert's a cuck. I don't know. Why are we talking about this in our Miyazaki episode?
Well, because we were talking about...
I think Miyazaki's ever read
strips.
Dilbert.
Yes.
And he's like, he gets it.
He has
Life
a
in
unique
cubicle.
insight into...
The spiritual crisis suffered by Dilbert is one suffered by many a person in the 21st century.
A day in the office eats at us all equally.
He has that line very early on where he's like, I am not a 21st century person. Like, he's like, I'm a man of the 20th century. I do not want to deal with the 21st century.
But I also love how sort of...
Dilbert, by the way.
Dilbert says that, yes. And then his tie goes up into his face. I love how flummoxed he is by the 20th century, too. Like, he keeps on talking about the confusion, his confusion around how Japan acted in, like, different decades.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. His
parents' generation. Like, he's sort of just so confounded by the totality of human behavior.
Well, it's one thing. That's why, right. The letter that becomes this weird central thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's sort of him thinking about his own father. And he's like, well, me and my father used to fight about, I would call him a war profiteer because he sold airplane parts. Mm-hmm. And so Miyazaki's kind of referring to a more radical past of his, right?
Sure.
You also see that image of him as a union guy. He was like part of the union when he worked at Toei Animation, I think. Mm-hmm. And so he sort of has this retro. I was a little more jacked up back then. But then also he's like, but my father did this good thing, and this is very interesting for me to consider, like this sort of selfless thing my dad
Not
did.
only that, but it's like a moment of very like intimate kindness that it seems like he did not experience with his own father very often.
Right, exactly.
And because it was directed at another child, that's the kind of thing that makes you reevaluate, like, why isn't my dad giving me chocolate?
Right.
Not that it was just the chocolate, although chocolate sounded pretty tight.
Chocolate's pretty good. I love a chocolate.
Big fan.
And there's that, and then he has that. There's that shot. Sometimes they'll insert shots from The Wind Rises where the guy has the 2 chocolate cakes.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. We recorded our Wind Rises episode 15 years ago.
Right, and you were having a goddamn meltdown during it. You were like, what is life? What is existence?
Well, I want to talk about that again.
Okay,
because this thing reopened a lot of those wounds. But I was just sort of like so confounded by the fact that people thought this film was pro-war.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And he talks so explicitly in this movie.
Right.
I mean, there's that scene where he like shows the storyboards to the producer, whose name I'm forgetting.
Suzuki?
Yeah. And he's like, it's pretty strongly anti-war.
Right.
And Miyazaki's like, I know, I think I have to do it though.
And there's
like they're concerned that it's going to be too political.
The later, very at the end scene where they're showing that he gave interviews, which he did at the time of like Japan has a piece essentially written into its constitution. They're not allowed to declare war.
Yeah.
And he gave an interview where he was like, "We must just keep this because it's an ongoing debate in Japan. Maybe we should change our constitution, right?" Like, and they're reading the new headlines where they're like, "Oh, this could hurt the film," but I think it was important.
Sure.
So yeah, again,
but it's one of those
putting himself out there.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like I don't understand if it's just that American audiences wanted a didactic explanation that Japan's collaboration with Germany was bad.
Right.
Which the film is so clearly saying. I mean, the whole Werner Herzog character is like, the one sort of good German who understands the evil of what's happening around him. And Miyazaki says it so clearly in this movie, which is just like, he just loves planes. And unfortunately...
There's that moment, right, where he says, like, they're just so cool, though. Right?
But he's sort of like, what a dramatic irony.
Yeah, right.
That this man who has no interest in war...
He loves planes.
He loves a thing that ultimately will be used for war.
Right.
Which is the thing he's interested in. And it's like, especially in a year with fucking like Jojo Rabbit and A Hidden Life... Where it's like you got 2 movies that are about, and I haven't seen Hidden Life yet.
It's good.
But 2 movies that are about like individual Germans.
Sure.
Who, do not agree with their country's actions.
Right.
In the time of World War II.
Right.
And this film is purposefully messier because it's about someone who is not pro-war. But his art form is something that can literally be weaponized, which is also a thing that like Miyazaki taught. I mean, this is the part that like destroyed me the most, where he's talking about like, I mean, I feel stupid for like making movies.
Right.
Like, I make movies because they are a pure and beautiful thing for me, and I'm obsessed with them. But, like, I don't think they accomplish any good.
Right.
I think mostly they're pretty much bad now. I used to think there was a purity to this art form. It, like, feels foolish. I want to see if I can pull up the exact scene because the way he words it is just, like, so cutting. But that's the thing that broke me watching Wind Rises is it's like, yes, there's, like, a larger extreme example.
We talked about this on the episode. I remember this. Right, yeah.
And for me, I like, the Miyazaki miniseries, in a certain way, these are tough films to watch in the way that we watch them.
Right.
Where it's like you're going through his entire life in a condensed period of time.
Right.
Mostly watching his movies, spending this much time thinking about him. It's pretty all-consuming. And at the time we were doing the miniseries, I was also a pretty raw nerve because of the tick cancellation, which I was super fucking depressed about.
Yeah.
And less the end of that specific job and more my feeling of like incredible confusion and fear about like what the fuck can I possibly do in this industry now?
Well, because you guys are also obsessed with trajectories, and I know you, and I know that you're having this moment of now reassessing.
I'm having one of those moments that we tend to talk about on the podcast.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out what the fuck I'm doing.
Where do I point myself?
And what scares me is I look around and it's not even about like boohoo job prospect shit. It's not me complaining about not getting hired for stuff. I look around, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this landscape.
Right.
I think in much of the way that
What
Miyazaki...
would satisfy? What would feel worthwhile or important or...
All of that.
Those things.
Right. To a certain degree, I've been very lucky that I have gotten to accomplish a lot of the things that existed as like big artistic dreams of mine.
Yeah.
Whether or not the things ended up becoming successful or, surviving or even being seen by people. Like in terms of the actual, like the challenge of the work, I've gotten to do a lot of the things I wanted to do, which I've been incredibly spoiled in that sense. And so like that list is diminished and I look around now and it's like, well, those were the things I had as like 20-year goals. And I somehow accomplished a lot of them in like 10 years. And now what do I want to be challenged by? And I look around at the landscape and I'm like, I don't know if the things that I would want to do the most are even possible to do today. I don't know if the landscape exists. Not to be oblique about it because it's hard to like verbalize some of it. But even just in terms of what gets made and how it gets made, how it gets made is so much of it. Like watching the way that Miyazaki is just like, I'm doing the whole storyboard myself. I don't have a script. No one can read it. People get drips and drabs. And then when I'm finally done, I hand the storyboard to my producer and friend of 40 years, and he sits down and reads it and goes like, okay.
Right.
And I do it when I do it. It's done when I'm done. It's done when I'm done. Jeez. That thing that he says when they like show the archival video of them founding the Ghibli studios, the physical space, being able to buy the space and build the company and all of that. When he sort of says like, if you are here for long-term job security, you are in the wrong place. The only reason for you to be here is because you want to do the work and that's what's satisfying to you. Right. Most companies are just a conduit for money, and I'm not interested in that.
Conduit for money, yeah.
Conduit for money is incredible.
I think in Japan especially, you can tell like they are a little more, they're like a little unusual. Like those old pictures of them, they kind of look cool. Yes. They got like the collar, not button downs, like, and like they dress a little. Because I think in Japan still, even though it's a changing country like every country, there is that expectation of like get a job at a good company and you can work your way up, and like that's very much like a sort of system we can still subscribe to.
Right.
And he seems to be laying out like, it's not really how we're going to do. Like that's not what this is.
He's
like,
doing Dafara.
This is not like an apprenticeship, up to the boss. You're not going to get a corner office or whatever.
Right. Because the other thing they say is, I mean, there's like that scene where he sort of like walks by where they're doing the merchandise, and we've talked about this in other episodes, but that they like, he was so resistant to merchandise for a while. He realized it was necessary at a certain point and only like acquiesced when he felt like the actual craftsmanship of the product was so undeniable that he had to respect that they were putting the same level into the merchandise that he does into his own work.
Right.
But that they cap how much merchandise they can sell per year. And that like in a year like this where you have their two big directors like deep into trying to make their next and possibly final films with no end in sight, years over schedule, that they need to sell that stuff to keep the lights on. But that part of the design of the company is it doesn't have to grow every year. We don't have to like expand with our successes. We need to be able to have a year where we don't make a movie and don't make that much money and it doesn't bankrupt us. That our overhead is so low that the success of one film can like carry us for 5 years or whatever, you know? It is kind of incredible how much he doesn't care about anything other than the purity of whatever he's trying to say in the movie he's working on at that moment. You know? That scene that's incredible where it's like a bunch of the animators sitting around their desks, and I assume one of like the supervising animators is like giving them notes, and then he walks by and goes like, the woman must not.
He's giving a specific note about how she sort of is giving a side eye.
She's like looking to the side and turning her head.
Yeah, and he's like, it makes her look disdainful in a way that like a woman would not have behaved in this era. Like it's too modern.
And also it's just not the type of film we're making, and it's not who this character is.
Right.
And then it's also tied to the whole thing. I didn't like, I guess you told me this, but I didn't fully process the weirdness of him hiring Anno to...
I believe we talk about it actually on the House Movie Podcast episode.
Because Ehrlich was all in on that performance.
Right. But I mean, it's watching that whole thing unfold is fantastic.
It's insane.
Because Anno worked with him, I believe, it's on Nausicaa, right?
Yes.
And
he did the monster.
Yes. And so they, they have a long-standing relationship, but this is a huge figure in
directs
anime,
Shin Godzilla.
Right? So he is, certainly busy and important, right? And there's that scene where they're like, well, what should the guy sound like? And Miyazaki has this whole concept of like, he's conserving all his energy to use artistically in designing. Like, so he would be clipped and he would be businesslike and he would not speak, he would speak in this very precise way. Exactly.
But it's that scene
and then
where
someone's like, what if we do Anno? And Miyazaki's like, that's interesting. Like he keeps being like, he like can't let it go.
It's even funnier than that.
I can't do it. I mean, it's so funny to watch him behave that way.
They give him the list and he's like, this is what this character needs to be. And he's like talking on such like deep terms about the elements that are important to this character and the things that would betray the character. And then the producer says like, so it almost feels like you want a non-actor.
Right. You want a non-actor. Right. Exactly.
Because he says, like, none of these people on this list can do that.
Right.
And then they're like, what do you want? And he's like almost if it was someone who, like, sounded like Anno. Like, they don't even say, what if you cast Anno? Right. They're like someone who sounds like him. And he's like, Anno does have a weird voice.
Right.
And then he just keeps on going. Like,
and then just that, like, where Miyazaki calls him, right? Yeah. And Anno's like, well, how can I refuse? You are Miyazaki,
the producer calls him and is like, this is going to sound crazy.
Yeah, right. In the car.
As you know, Miyazaki is working on, Miyasan is working on The Wind Rises, and he wants you to be the lead character.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's very sweet watching him record, Miyazaki in the booth.
How much he loves him, that he
loves him, but also like what Miyazaki loving something looks like.
Yes.
Where he looks just like a little amused, basically. But it's clearly overwhelming to him.
Other things I want to speed around.
Yeah, exactly. There are some few things that was definitely something.
At the end of the screening when he says, this is the first time I ever credit one of my own movies.
No, I have to lay this out.
Please.
They screen the movie in a big screening room.
Yeah.
It looks like the whole staff is there.
Finished.
It's probably a couple hundred people.
All of G.
He is sitting just in the middle. He's not on an aisle. He gets up.
He's already announced at this point that he's going to retire.
Yeah, although his statement is very clear that he's not actually going to retire.
Okay.
Because it's right. It's like, I plan to retire in the next 10 years. And I'm like, motherfucker, you're like in your 70s.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, he's sitting, not even on an aisle, gets up with his umbrella.
Yeah.
Walks out, like sort of shuffles between the people in front of the, stands in front and goes
everyone's
like,
speech.
And he's like, this is embarrassing to say, but I've never cried at one of my own movies before. Thank you. And then walks back. Away. No, walks back, sits back down, like in the chair. And then Suzuki's like, all right, everyone, we can go. And then everyone leaves. Like, he's not so presumptuous to think that'll end it. He's like, maybe someone else wants to stand up. I don't know. That was just my thought.
Anything else anyone wants to share?
Is that I was moved to tears. You also see him sort of being moved to tears when they're doing the voiceovers at one point. You can see,
Yes.
I love Miyazaki.
I know.
I mean, David, thank you again for suggesting this. I mean, I know Griffin.
I know Griffin,
but
I mean, we've talked about him.
Yeah, I mean, look,
your guidance through this. I mean, I am 100% a now Miyazaki fan.
Yeah, and it was a weird miniseries. I mean, I feel like
we did him fast.
We did them fast.
Yeah.
I was going through shit, which not clashed with, but was like a weird, excuse me.
Wow, he's coughing.
My career anxiety formed a weird chemistry with these movies, which are so much about doing the work and focusing on like the purity of life and accepting the messiness and the hopelessness of it all in spite of the beauty that surrounds you.
Yeah, like what?
Right.
Yeah, right. He's a weird mix for you for that.
It's a weird mix for all of that. And I also like, it's a different culture than we've ever tackled in such depth on this show, sustained for an entire miniseries. And like it's a very different sort of like all the context stuff that we love. His career functions very differently. It's about one man being sort of steadfast.
Right. Those are some of the things I want to talk. Like that scene, whatever.
Yeah.
The clip of Suzuki giving the press conference.
Yes.
Where he's sort of like, there's a bunch of reporters. He's like, look, I mean, Takahata, what can I say? The guy's fucking insane. He's never going to finish. I don't think he wants to finish. And he's like, anyway, what Miyazaki's going for, and I think this is really raising a lot of stuff for him personally. Yeah. He's talking, and I'm just comparing that to like Kevin Feige giving his, his slideshows of like the next Marvel. Imagine if Kevin Feige just came out and was like, yeah, so I mean, what's fucking me up about Thor 4 is this, and he's just like sitting with a bunch of guys and having a convo.
It is just
so
like,
weird. I've had that same thought. Like, no, how could he be
It's
so modest?
Good. Yeah, right.
But it also just feels like he's like a SoundCloud rapper or something. Going like, I was feeling this last week, and here's my new album, and this is what it's about. You know?
Yeah.
It's like kind of astounding how away from the machinery he is. But not just like, oh, he's like the creative guy and there are money people around him, but that the people around him sort of follow in his philosophy and do the bare minimum of businessy stuff.
Exactly.
Because even the whole thing with the NTV guy, where they're like, this is our relationship. NTV is the only network where Miyazaki and Ghibli films play. Do you know why? Because this man is like, and then he's like, can I call it a friend? Is it friendship? And the guy's like, yeah, I think it is. And he's like, he comes over here every single night and sits here and talks to us, and we don't talk about business. We talk about anything else in life.
Sounds nice.
And eventually we get to talking about family, and then our families become friends. And then Miyazaki goes on a trip to his cabin, and his daughter in that trip in that cabin was the inspiration for Spirited Away, and everyone in the room gasps.
It's great.
And he's just sort of like, sometimes you got to invest 10 years in like a relationship.
Get a seed of creativity.
You got to trust people. You don't know where the things are going to come from. You just got to do the work.
A couple other things. There's that scene with Goro Miyazaki, his son.
Yes.
Who he's kind of aggro.
And he's like, I didn't want to do this. I never want to be an animator.
It's a very interesting thing to include.
I feel this like onus to make another film because if I don't, these people might not have work.
Right.
But you have to understand, when I decide whether or not to make a film, I'm fighting against the fact that this isn't what I want to do, and I didn't think I'd end up here.
So you got that?
Yes.
And then there's this other thing I just wanted, this incredible ending, probably the best movie ending of all time, where Miyazaki, they're doing the press conference, and he's like, look out the window. Look at these roofs. Look at that guy. He doesn't know we're watching him. And then he imagines, like, well, you could jump across the roofs.
They really use clips from his
And then
movies.
they do this montage. I think Emily mentioned it on one of our episodes. Of all the jumping across the roofs and running and things like that. And I mean, it should reduce you to rubble. It's just incredible.
Yeah. And then the pure ending, my friend, feels like a shot at Miyazaki, where it's just him very slowly walking out of the studio with his wife.
There's also a midway through, which could have been the ending, that thing where I think I mentioned where he's like, I know how it will end. Like, it will all be over soon.
Ghibli
is a name I got from an airplane.
Right.
Like,
they said, does the future of the company not worry you? And he goes, I know what the future is. It will end.
Right. It will
end.
This
place will shut down. The name means nothing.
The name means nothing. How pretty. He's like staring out into the garden. Yeah.
I also love how much he talks about, like, he loves the Zero plane so much.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to draw it himself because he feels like he can't do it. But he's noting everyone to death because it doesn't look like what it
Right, and everyone else was like, I thought it was that he's being a taskmaster. Right. But in fact, he can't do it.
Right.
Right. Even he cannot do
And this
it.
is like an impossible task to try to draw the thing in his brain that he can't explain and that he can't draw himself.
Right.
And then every time they go back to him, they're like, so you just love zeros that much? He's like, I don't like zeros. I don't like them. It's not that I like them. And it feels like a 12-year-old denying he has a crush on someone. Like every time it's the one time he starts to feel a little riled up in the entire movie where he's like, it's not that I like them. I just, it's what the movie demands. Shut the fuck up. Leave me alone. I don't like zeros.
Did we really not do a list? All right. Let's do our lists if we haven't done lists.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough?
Yeah, it's a tough list.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my list is ridiculous anyway because I like them all. But and if it is in the other episode, then just cut this shit out, I guess. I don't know. Anyway.
Sorry, I can't remember.
I could have sworn we did it, but maybe I'm just conflating some other list making.
Something we didn't mention on mic. No friggin' computers.
Oh, yeah. Ben and I were talking about that. It's so shocking to see an office with no computers. It's kind of incredible.
He doesn't even have like a traditional animator work desk. He doesn't have that slanted desk with the light box underneath and all that sort of shit.
Yeah. And you just watching him do the thing where he like keeps lifting the page back up. It's so... Yeah, look, we can fetishize this kind of like handheld, this old fashioned stuff, but it's hard not to fetishize it.
And look, at a certain point, they hand it off, they scan it in, they use caps to color it and clean up and all that sort of stuff.
Course,
in terms of what he's doing, there's like it's a completely analog office. It seems like you barely see electronic devices.
It must be so
anywhere around.
We've talked about this before, but to make an animated film. And to be drawn all that shit. And for so long to not know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
You know? Like, at least with a movie, you can look at your dailies. You can see what you're getting, right? Yeah. It's not going to be the full picture.
It's one of the many things that scared me off of being an animator when I thought about going down that path. When I started actually doing it, when I, like, made a couple of animated shorts myself and was, like, studying it, I just, that, like, you know, it's like, Soderbergh always says that like filmmaking is like it feels like doing a Seurat painting where you're like spending this much time looking at one singular like dot made by a brush on a canvas, and you have to in your mind put together what that dot is going to do in conjunction with all the other dots.
Sody.
Like writing an orchestra.
Sure.
You don't know what it's going to sound like until it gets put up and all the instruments and all the players are playing.
But filmmaking is so bizarre because you don't even have that moment where they're all playing at the same time because you're doing all the pieces completely separate, jumbled out of order in a way that doesn't make sense. And then you hope that when you edit them all together, it amounts to something greater. You know, I mean, and from every element, like the performances, there are performances that on a scene-by-scene basis could look perfect that when you cut together don't work, and vice versa. It's a very bizarre thing. All of this is overwhelming. I'm glad we did Miyazaki. I'm very excited to have like watched all these films and to be able to watch them again, like revisit them. I feel like I've barely sort of grappled with them and him.
They're very lovely to rewatch.
Yeah,
as someone who just rewatched them all. All right, here's my list.
Okay,
it's a wild list.
Yeah.
To be clear, everything in this movie is from an 8 to a 10.
Everything on this list.
I mean, on this list, on this list, right? Like, it's either, top or very high for me. So ranking it is sort of very much a matter of personal enjoyment more than objective quality. I want to offer
the exact same qualifier that I'm just talking about which ones I enjoyed the most.
Number 1, Spirit, this is me. This is me.
Yep, this is you.
This is me. Whoa. That's number 1. It's Greatest Showman.
All right, dog, take it.
All right, sorry. Spirited Away, number 1. Number 2, Ponyo.
Of course.
Number 3, Porco.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, Windrise. Number 5, Kiki. Number 6, Totoro. And all of those are perfect.
Yeah.
Number 7, Castle in the Sky. And number 8, Nausicaa. Those two are very much twinned for me.
Okay.
And then number 9, Cagliostro, which I love.
Yeah.
And number 10, Mononoke. And number 11, Howl.
Mononoke at 10's kind of wild.
That's the Mononoke and Howl are the only ones that I might not just want to watch every single day.
Yeah.
And I still love them.
Okay, my number 1, Spirited Away, is just kind of undeniable.
Hell yeah.
It's just a perfect object.
I agree.
Number 2, my main man Porco Rosso.
Hell yeah. He's a good boy.
A movie that Miyazaki refers to in this documentary as foolish. And I was like, is he subtweeting me?
Boy, oh boy.
But then they're like,
he loves it.
But they press him on. They're like, what do you mean by foolish? And he's like, well, it's for children.
Right.
I didn't have the courage to make a film that wasn't for children. And then you're like, that's his kids movie?
Yeah, I was like, I'm about to say, like, that movie's not really for children, but whatever.
Rather be a pig than a fascist.
Exactly.
That kid's path. It's like Baby Shark. Okay, number 2, Porco Rosso. Number 3, Castle Cagliostro. Number 4.
I expected that to be very high for you.
Yes. Love him. Been watching a lot of Lupin. I bought a Lupin action figure, which is maybe the best action figure I own.
Cool.
Not going to go into this, but it's...
that seems like that's like a Patreon episode, is you talking about your action figures.
Let me just put it this way. It's very well engineered.
Oh, wow.
Very well engineered.
I don't know if I love that. I don't know what that means.
That would be an opportunity to use the 3D mic. And we can record Griffin playing with his toys.
Yeah, Ben's like, look, I bought these damn 3D
I gotta use
mics.
this fucking thing.
The B&H was closed on a Saturday. It wasn't used for the fucking
so
Six
mad
Flags.
about it.
Look, I'm not saying that I'm going to take you up on this, but I like that for the first time I said something about toys where you were like, I don't understand that. And you're almost edging on asking me to explain myself.
But later.
Terrible engineer, but can we very quickly merchandise spotlight the thing I got you?
Of course, little Ponyo.
Because
We forgot to mention that.
forgot to mention it.
Well, because it took you a while to remember to give it to me. Oh,
Yeah.
and I have your glasses.
Oh, amazing. That's my merchandise spotlight. But I got David a little plush Ponyo. It's a little stuffed Ponyo.
It's so cute.
It's about 4 inches long. And what happens?
She'll wiggle.
It's
She
got a
wiggles
little pull
along.
string. You pull it, and it wiggles along on her belly.
She rolls. It's fish Ponyo. Full fish Ponyo.
Full fish Ponyo. Okay, so Cagliostro is number 3. Number 4 for me is Castle in the Sky. I like those large adult suns and those flying machines. Number 5 is Princess Mononoke.
Sure.
Number 6 is The Wind Rises.
Sure.
Number 7 is Kiki.
Okay.
Then I would say Nausicaa.
Sure. It's hard to do this.
No, I would do Ponyo above Nausicaa.
Okay.
And then Howl's Moving Castle. Did I cover all of them? I forgot Totoro.
Wow, bottom.
No, Totoro, I put... It's not bottom, because it's definitely above Howl for me.
Okay, so put it at 10.
Okay, I put it at 10.
Yeah.
I feel like a dummy, but it's the one I still kind of can't crack.
It's a movie I really admire and appreciate, but because I saw it as a full grown-up, it's always been something I more admire and appreciate than watch over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's very good. Quite good.
David's packing his bag. He has to go see Last Christmas.
Gave him his heart. Probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
I keep fucking the lyrics up.
Yeah.
Paul Feig, right? It's a Paul Feig movie?
It's a Feig picture.
All right. Well, I don't mind Paul.
You know what his next movie is, right?
No.
Dark Army.
Oh, I do vaguely know.
Which is not part of the Dark Universe, but is about Universal monsters.
All right. All right.
Weird to just title it Dark. Anyway, that was Miyazaki. David is literally running out of the studio. Do you have any final thoughts, David?
It was a great miniseries to do. It was weirdly contentious for the fan base at times, but whatever.
Yeah.
I really loved watching these movies, and then the demi-series is really good. It's very different.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially compared to
We got like half them in the can. Good apps, good guess.
Later, David.